Sometimes I come in with a long list of things to chat about. This isn't one of those days. I really fundamentally want to make myself available to you for the things that are on your mind. I will share with you that tomorrow I am introducing, at the request of the county executive, the ambulance fee proposal that he has resubmitted to us. I cannot at this moment prejudge what the outcome of that will be. I've shared with you my own views with respect to it, that the voters have spoken with respect to this issue, and I'm not aware of any changed circumstances which, in my personal judgment, warrant revisiting this issue. But that will be up to the will of my colleagues. We will have a public hearing with respect to it. It will go to committee, I believe, scheduled for May 10th, and we will take it up shortly thereafter. We had
the public hearing will be before going to committee?
No, the public hearing is always the first thing that happens after introduction. Okay. So a public hearing will be on May 8th, an evening public hearing. So I'll introduce it tomorrow. You need a couple of weeks, I believe, notice to the public with respect to it before you can have a public hearing. So we'll have the public hearing on the 8th, which is, I believe, a Wednesday evening. We will take it up on Friday afternoon or morning in the Public Safety Committee. And then it will go to full council shortly thereafter, or probably the next Tuesday. Because we do need to know whether or not these dollars are going to be part of our budget or not. And so it's important to get it resolved one way or the other. We had a meeting last week in the Transportation, Infrastructure, Energy, Environment Committee with respect to the Silver Spring Transit Center. That issue clearly has not been resolved. So we look forward to more conversations. I've requested a closed session in which we would hear from our county officials more frankly than they can speak in open session, insofar as this is a matter that could involve potential litigation and therefore is necessary to handle in a delicate manner, and where we need to hear from our partners in this endeavor, which is WMATA in particular, with respect to their own views with respect to the structural integrity sets of issues. There are the issues as it relates to the specifications, and then there are the issues as it relates to the structural integrity of the building and whether or not the structural integrity of the building has been compromised as a result of not meeting the specifications. And apparently that's an open-ended question. So we will be exploring that in the weeks ahead as well. What else is new? We saw that one of our local papers had strong views with respect to Lockheed Martin. I have responded to that as president of the council, and have shared the perspective that this matter did come before us a couple of years ago in terms of a proposal for a change in our tax law, because it is our tax law that includes this facility within the scope of it. And at the time that that facility was built, Lockheed Martin was aware that the tax law encompassed that facility and went forward notwithstanding that. And our county attorneys have not indicated any legal basis for excluding Lockheed Martin with respect to it. And that was why 2 years ago, when the county executive proposed it, it did not garner a single vote at the time. As to whether my colleagues feel differently with respect to this economic development proposal, that again remains to be seen. But typically our economic development proposals relate to attraction and retention of existing buildings, of existing businesses, and aren't retroactive in nature as this is. So it isn't clear to me whether or not, again, circumstances have changed such that our council will change its view. There are clearly competing views. We do value Lockheed Martin. In fact, I had a Transportation, Infrastructure, Energy, and Environment Committee meeting just the other day in which we invited Lockheed Martin to come before us and share with us their great work on energy efficiency. They are cutting edge when it comes to retrofitting the commercial sector, and have partnered with Sacramento and Miami-Dade in doing some really groundbreaking work. And I invited our county officials to be at this briefing and participate in the briefing to understand whether or not we could partner with Lockheed Martin in that way and for Montgomery County, because from my perspective, the way in which we show our gratitude, if you will, to Lockheed Martin for being based in Montgomery County is when we share the same values and the same amount of good work, that we partner and we do work together, and that's a good way to say thank you to Lockheed Martin as opposed to perhaps this other way. With that, I will open it up to the things that are on your mind.
Mr. Stanley resigned last week. What was your reaction to that, and what happens now?
Well, one, I've spoken with Mr. Stanley. I understand he has a great opportunity elsewhere that was simply too good for him to pass up, and so I congratulate him on his being able to expand his portfolio and his situation in life in a great way. And Mr. Stanley has helped our county move forward in ways in which we need to move forward. And of course, it creates controversy anytime you're making changes, as we have been in our county. He was someone that was very instrumental in the White Flint redevelopment plan, which I think is going to show itself to be one of the most important steps we've ever taken in our county in terms of generating economic opportunities and improving the quality of life. So I think he's made a number of very significant contributions to our county. So I wish him well. I've spoken with the chair of the planning board, and they will go about recruitment and do a national search. And I think that there are going to be a lot of candidates, and we will continue to be well served in this critically important position.
Do you think there'll be any setbacks with his departure in the meantime?
In my own judgment, I think our county's sails have been set, if you will, in a particular direction, which is a combination of an absolute commitment to protecting the integrity of our residential neighborhoods, of which we have so many wonderful ones, and at the same time looking at our commercial sector and the places where smart growth is what we need to do. And so I think that we have, if you will, crossed the Rubicon on that dynamic, and so I don't see us retreating in that regard. I do think it's important, as has clearly been the case, that we honor our commitment to our residential communities, that they are not compromised, and I believe that there is ongoing support on this council and elsewhere to achieve that.
How did you find out he had resigned? How were you informed?
Shortly after he shared with his staff, one of our people, our county people, were literally standing right there, and he emerged from a room and made some reference, and it immediately was public, as you can imagine. So we heard within minutes, and I placed a call to him immediately.
And he's supposed to leave in mid-May, correct?
Yes, he basically gave about a month's notice. And I believe it's being revealed today as to where he's going.
Can you tell us?
I cannot. If I knew, I would not. That is his to do, and I believe he is wherever it is that he's going, and that they are making a public announcement today.
Could you just sum up his legacy? You know, how do you feel he's going to be remembered here?
Well, I think he's going to be remembered as someone that pushed us to embrace the essence of smart growth. And the essence of smart growth, of course, is to reduce your environmental footprint, to rely more on transit, and to have greater density in those areas in which you have your transit, to stop perpetuating sprawl, and anybody that pushes, there will always be pushback. So that's just inevitable, and so that was part of his legacy as well.
Tomorrow the council is introducing a resolution on the collective bargaining agreement. Do you know if that includes the recent changes to disability pension that were recommended by the arbitrator in the FOP bargaining?
I don't know if that's included within it. I'll check for you. Is Mr. Farber here? I really, I don't know. I was focused more on the lump sum aspect of it, so I just don't know the
Okay,
breadth of it.
fine.
Last week's council session, I think it was deferred, talking about the Pepco bill. Just wondering if that's going to be on the list of the agenda this week.
No, actually, the Pepco bill was introduced.
It was?
Yes.
I got the message.
The street tree, there was a separate street tree bill that was not introduced,
Okay.
which is a separate initiative. The Pepco bill was indeed introduced.
And where are we with that now that it has been introduced?
Well, it just goes through its normal process. There'll be a public hearing, not until June, I believe. Again, because of our budget cycle, we focus very much on the budget between now and the end of May and try and limit the amount of work we do other than that. So it is something that will come up in June.
Has the Public Service Commission contacted you in any way discussing what Pepco had sent over to them?
I had picked up the phone, as I think I shared with someone, I forget who it was, and I had picked up the phone and called the chairman of the Public Service Commission because I understood that he had expressed some concerns with respect to it, so that I walked him through what the intention of the bill was. He had initially been concerned that the bill was inconsistent with our desire for greater reliability, and in fact, I believe now he understands that we are supporting the reliability and actually increasing reliability, because there are instances today, in fact, Pepco had requested legislation, which this bill incorporates, to ensure that when there is a tree on private property that poses an imminent hazard to Pepco's lines, that something could be done about it. This bill does precisely that, which is not something they've had previously, and not something they've gotten from the Maryland Public Service Commission, not something they could get from the Maryland Public Service Commission. So we're actually, in this legislation, enhancing reliability. At the same time, we're ensuring that the work that they do is done in an environmentally appropriate manner. So it's, in my judgment, a very balanced approach, and I think the chairman now has a greater understanding of the motivation with respect to the bill and its consequences.
Now that you got it clarified a little bit better and explained it to them, do you think that they're in line with this bill, or?
I don't want to characterize his views at this juncture. That's for him to say. They've made it clear that they are not going to opine with respect to whether we have the right to do this. Pepco had sought a declaration from the Maryland Public Service Commission that we are legally preempted from taking the measures that we are, and the commission has declined to make that ruling. So I'm quite confident that we're going to be able to move forward, and I'm confident, much more confident, that he's has a greater understanding with respect to the bill.
And have you received, I know that you said the public hearing is later on in June, but have you received any feedback from the public so far in regards to?
All I can tell you is, as I shared last week, is that we get feedback almost every day with respect to the need to protect our trees. I was at a public meeting on Thursday night with a community for whom trees is their number one issue.
Mm-hmm.
So there's just a great desire on the part of our community to make sure that as we increase our reliability, we don't do it at the expense of the aesthetics and of the environmental benefits of having trees.
Now, with the reliability part of the bill aside, more talking on the lines of Pepco and how they approach residents of our county as property owners. I mean, you had said that it was it was in the top 3 reasons people have been calling. Is that still continuing?
Yes. Again, we get, perhaps we can provide you with some emails that we get. I mean, we get almost literally every day.
I would definitely be interested in seeing.
So I'll see if we can do so.
Okay.
Check with Susan and my staff.
And then, I mean, if that's that big of a problem, how long is it going to take to really fix that then? I mean, has Pepco contacted you guys in any way, or have you contacted Pepco about these calls or emails that you've received?
Oh, we share with PEPCO on a regular basis our concerns with respect to this, and this legislation has been in the works for approximately 6 months or greater, in which, again, remember that it was PEPCO that asked for legislation, and I said in the absence of that I was prepared to consider their request for more authority if I was confident that they were using their existing authority in an appropriate manner and that our citizens understood their rights. So that is why this has been something that has been discussed with them for some time.
In regards to the ambulance fees, you said your view hasn't changed in 2 years. The county executive said, or saying that the situation in Annapolis, whatever comes down, is going to cost the county a lot of money, and he thinks the picture has changed. Why hasn't it changed to you?
Well, first of all, I am hopeful that this year we don't need these dollars, in part because the legislature has provided for offsets to the increases that we're going to bear with respect to the pension cost shift this year. There's no question that going forward, Annapolis, assuming there's a special session, and assuming the special session confirms what had been in the conference committee reports, that would result in a pension cost shift. There's no question that over time these are significant dollars. When the county executive proposed an ambulance fee several years ago, we were in the height of a great recession. We were cutting and slashing. So I would just say to you, from my perspective, while the future isn't great in context of Annapolis, our economy is stronger now than it was then, and so I see them as close, parallel situations. So I don't see a fundamental difference that would, in my judgment, justify overturning the will of the people on the exact same legislation 2 years later.
If this passes, can it go to referendum again?
Yes, it would. I'm most assuredly it would go to referendum again. So if last time it was a 5-4 vote in favor of it, I don't know if it'll be a 5-4 vote in favor of it this time, in part because of the intervening voter referendum. Now the question you have to ask yourself is precisely what the county executives suggested, that the circumstances are so different that we ought to ignore or the will of the people as expressed in a referendum. For me, it hasn't risen to that level.
Do you think by proposing this again, he's ignoring the will of the people?
I believe I will take at face value his judgment that his view that circumstances have changed such that it warrants putting it back before the people.
Are you hearing from constituents on this? I know last week you had said you had heard from some folks at a fire event you had gone to.
Destroy the morale of our combined volunteer career services. So it has been a hot button issue and will continue to be a hot button issue. So yes, we do hear from our constituents on these sets of issues.
Have you talked to any other council members about it? We know how Phil Andrews stands.
We do know how Phil Andrews stands. I've had some conversations with my colleagues with respect to it, and I think everyone is grappling with the dynamic that I have suggested to you, which is, do you get to the merits? And the merits are hotly contested. But now, in between the merits, you have the will of the people. How do you address that issue? And to me, the only way you can overcome that dynamic is if you believe, as the county executive has suggested, that circumstances have changed so radically that it justifies ignoring, if you will, the will of the people as expressed in that referendum. And I think each of us are trying to come to terms with that in the way in which we're comfortable with, and I've expressed to you my own judgment on that.
So when do you expect a vote or anything on those issues? I mean,
Yes, before you came, we will have a public hearing on May 8th. It will go to committee on May 10th, and we will take it up, I believe, the following Tuesday on May, whatever that is. Okay?
One of the things that I downstairs this morning was looking at, included the speed camera program. You're adding cameras. I think it's about, or combined with red light cameras, it's about $10 million you're adding. You're adding more cameras. I guess, does that mean this has been a success? How do you, I guess, quantify?
I personally have always felt that this was a successful program. It is another one in which we hear from constituents all the time is you've nailed me again. And I've been among those that have gotten tickets from speed cameras, and I see it as closely aligned to a sin tax, if you will. I mean, if you are speeding more than 11 miles over the speed limit, end of story. I'll take your money, and I have every right to take your money. So from my perspective, I've never quite bought into the counter-argument that this is an abuse of government power. No, speeding is against the law, and if you're only doing it at 11 miles over, we're giving you a very nice cushion. So that, I think it's been a successful program. And I would say that if, I appreciate you raising the Public Safety Committee meeting this morning, you'll see that our crime statistics are down significantly. And you will also see that the county executive has proposed increasing our police staffing by 43 individuals, 34 of whom would be on the beat officers that would give each district greater flexibility in responding to emergent situations in their communities. And while we took no votes today, I am pretty optimistic that our committee and our full council ultimately will be in concurrence with this. Public safety is arguably the most important function we serve as in county government, and we have been asking the police chief for some time as to whether or not he has enough staffing, and he's said on a number of occasions he doesn't, and we've been saying, well, let's see a plan. And so this is phase one of a 3-year plan that will ensure that we have the resources we need to keep our community safe, all of our communities safe, including adding 7 investigators for robberies so that we can have a higher closure rate than we do today and make sure that we are getting the details so that some of these crimes can be solved faster. What else, gang?
Mr. Farber can lend some, to Rachel, if you want to just ask your question again, I think. Steve.
You had asked whether or not the
Correct.
disability was part of the what will be coming over in that packet
Right.
tomorrow?
We did receive that late last week, and as a result, it won't be ready for introduction tomorrow, but it will
Okay.
be sooner after.
But it'll be handled separately.
Yes.
Okay, any indication among your colleagues whether that's something that you guys will end up approving, those changes that the arbitrator recommended?
I have heard from some of my colleagues, some of whom you might predict, and have not had conversations with other colleagues. Anything else, gang?
Good.
I don't need to filibuster.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.